The IDF is pounding Hezbollah missiles and missile launchers in Lebanon, and the ground maneuver continues making progress along the border. And last night, the IDF identified and exposed to the public a Hezbollah bunker under a Beirut hospital with $500 million in gold and cash. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The IDF 91st Division continues its offensive in South Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah positions and conducting defensive missions inside Lebanon for the security of Israeli border communities. Chief of Staff Halevi says that Hezbollah has been reduced to about 30% of the firepower it had before the start of the war. Halevi said that the 3-week ground maneuver in South Lebanon is severely damaging the terror group's operations near the border. The army said that the bombing raids carried out this week in Beirut and in the Bekaa caused severe damage to Hezbollah financial institutions.
קפנו קרוב ל-30 מטרות בכל רחבי לבנון, שזה איזה סוג של מערכת הבנקאות של חיזבאללה, קראג' אל-חסן, שהיא מקבלת את הכסף מאיראן, היא מלווה, והיא בסוף מממנת את הטרור של חיזבאללה.
The IDF showed the world the Hezbollah bunker formerly used by its slain leader, Hassan Nasrallah. The army said the hospital will not be attacked because Israel is at war with Hezbollah and not with the Lebanese people.
I am going to declassify intelligence on a site that we did not strike, where Hezbollah has millions of dollars in gold and cash. In Hassan Nasrallah's bunker. Where is the bunker located? Directly under El Sahel Hospital, in the heart of Beirut, in the Dakhia.
Meanwhile, visiting U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein arrived in Beirut amid Israeli strikes on the Lebanese capital. Hochstein is continuing efforts to secure a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah.
As President Biden said, our goal is a comprehensive agreement that implements UN Security Council Resolution 1701 and ensures this conflict is the last for many generations. 1701 was successful at ending the war in 2006, but we must be honest that no one did anything to implement it. The lack of implementation over those years contributed to the conflict that we are in today.
By all accounts, chances for an early ceasefire do not seem likely at this time.
And there is ongoing rocket fire into Israel. Red alerts blared this morning throughout large parts of central and northern Israel. There were no immediate reports of injuries or damages, and at least one rocket was downed over central Israel. 15 launches were detected in the Upper Galilee and the northern Golan. Some were intercepted and others fell in open areas. Overnight, Hezbollah rockets targeted Haifa and Acre. The Air Force identified and destroyed 5 incoming rockets with air defense, while earlier 5 UAVs launched at Israel were intercepted over the Mediterranean Sea. The UAVs were fired from Lebanon and were apparently targeting Ben Gurion International Airport. Takeoffs and landings were held up for less than an hour until it was determined that the danger had been eliminated. And now, not one, but 2 Iranian spy rings have been discovered in Israel in what authorities are calling one of the most serious breaches of national security in Israeli history. 2 spy rings, independent of each other, and each with different motives, acting on behalf of the Islamic Republic of Iran and endangering Israeli lives. All the details in the following report. 7 men from East Jerusalem were arrested on suspicion of planning attacks in Israel on behalf of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The arrests were announced Tuesday morning as part of a joint operation of the Shin Bet and Jerusalem Police. The suspects, aged 19 to 23, were planning to assassinate an Israeli nuclear scientist and a mayor of a city in central Israel. According to the investigation, the leader of the spy ring is a man named Rami Alian, who was directly recruited by an Iranian agent. He in turn recruited the additional 6 members, and they were given missions to carry out in exchange for money. Among the various missions included spraying graffiti, photographing various locations, and setting fire to vehicles, as well as instructions to purchase weapons and grenades, though they were apprehended before carrying out this task. According to Israeli News Channel 12, Alian confessed to investigators that he knew he was working for Iran and did so out of nationalistic motives. The 7 suspects were arrested in September, and the indictment is expected to be filed against them on Wednesday. This announcement comes just one day after another Iranian spy ring was uncovered, in which 7 Jewish Israelis who immigrated from Azerbaijan were arrested on suspicion of espionage, acting on behalf of the Islamic Republic of Iran in exchange for hundreds of thousands of shekels in cash and cryptocurrency. Authorities announced on Monday that the suspects, 5 men and 2 minors, were knowingly working with Iranian agents for the past 2 years in what has been described as one of the most serious security breaches in Israeli history. Israeli police said they believe the suspects carried out some 600 missions during this time period at the request of their Iranian handlers, who delivered the assignments through a Turkish intermediary. The men are suspected, among other things, of gathering intelligence on Israeli citizens, conducting surveillance with advanced equipment they purchased, and even photographing military bases, some of which were targeted by Iran during their October 1st missile attack against Israel. According to the authorities, their main motive was money, and the 7 are expected to be indicted on Friday on charges of collaborating with enemies of the State of Israel, which carries a life sentence. And there is still ongoing speculation as to the scope and timing of Israel's counterattack on the Islamic Republic of Iran. The regime is starting to feel the heat as it announced it has filed a complaint to a UN watchdog over Israel's impending strike. The details in the following report. Iran announced on Monday that it has written to the United Nations nuclear watchdog to complain about Israel's threats to strike its nuclear facilities. A foreign ministry spokesman said that any such act on Israel's part would be met with a decisive response from the Ayatollah regime. Israel has vowed to strike the Islamic Republic of Iran in retaliation for its October 1st attack, which saw over 180 ballistic missiles rain down on Israeli cities. Israel has promised a significant response, and there has been widespread speculation that it could target Iran's nuclear facilities or oil fields. U.S. President Joe Biden has publicly expressed his opposition to such a strike, while former U.S. President Donald Trump has called on Israel not to listen to Biden and to attack the nuclear facilities. Yet new developments over the past week, including a drone strike backed by the Islamic Republic of Iran against Netanyahu's private residence in Caesarea, and a U.S. intelligence leak disclosing Israel's preparations and plans for attack, have seen Israel increase its rhetoric and threats against the regime as the time for a counterattack inches closer. 3 weeks have passed since the Islamic Republic of Iran unleashed the largest ballistic missile attack against Israel in history. Israel has vowed a significant counterstrike in response, but is seemingly taking its time. Joining us now to discuss the impending Israeli response is Jonathan Shanzer, Senior Vice President of Research at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So Israel's rhetoric is increasing. The U.S. missile defense systems are now in place. How likely is it that we'll see the Israeli response in the coming days? And do you think that the fact that Israel has waited so long detracts from the response?
Well, it's an interesting dynamic right now. There are a few things at play. Number one is that the Biden administration has been working to water down some of the targets. In other words, we've heard from the White House that President Biden is uncomfortable with the Israeli striking, for example, nuclear facilities or oil facilities. The nuclear sites are obviously sensitive and could potentially push Iran to make a dash for a bomb. The oil facilities could cause a spike in oil prices leading up to the U.S. election. So I think those were probably expected from the White House. But then there was the unexpected, and that was the leaks that came the other day from unknown individuals, likely within the Pentagon, posting top secret information on a Telegram channel that actually appeared to have some relevant information relating to a forthcoming Israeli strike inside the Islamic Republic of Iran. That may have thwarted the Israelis yet again. I think one last thing to be aware of right now is the fact that we're getting very close to the elections here in the United States. There could be a timing factor now where the Biden administration says, okay, well, you can still attack the targets that we have agreed upon, but you are not allowed to do so with such little time remaining before the election, because then we could see an Iranian response and an escalation during a period that would be deemed sensitive by this White House. So a lot of factors at play here, but as far as we understand, the The Israelis still have their targets. They're still set on attacking Iran in response to that ballistic missile barrage. And I think in the meantime, perhaps the one positive here is that the psychological impact of this on the Islamic Republic should not be lost on anyone. They are nervous right now about an impending Israeli attack.
So a lot of things that you mentioned there, and I want to start first. The Biden administration, as you said, has been pressuring Israel to sort of temper its response. But last week it was reported that Netanyahu assured Biden he wouldn't attack the nuclear facilities. And as you said, that was before the U.S. intelligence leak and before a drone tried to assassinate the prime minister. Do you think these are serious enough to warrant Israel to perhaps reconsider its initial plans and in fact, go after the nuclear sites?
Well, I think there probably needs to be an order of battle here. I would suggest that the Israelis are still very much considering strikes on that nuclear program. There are, of course, probably several dozen different targets that they could strike. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Israelis hit, for example, a research facility associated with the nuclear program. But I would argue that right now, what the Israelis really need to be thinking about are missile defense, taking out the sites that would protect the skies over Iran so that future attacks might be easier. I think taking out ballistic missile batteries might also, or storage facilities might be more beneficial because it would potentially cut down on Iran's ability to fire back at Israel in response to whatever Israel does next. I think taking out intelligence targets is probably very likely because, as we know, the Iranians came perilously close to taking out or at least hitting the Mossad headquarters in Israel. So I think there are a bunch of things that the Israelis will hit in a first wave. But again, remember, this does not mean that Israel only gets one bite at the apple. There could be additional strikes that follow from Iran, which would lead to escalation, which would then allow Israel to strike back. And of course, we have 2.5, 3 months of that period between the U.S. elections and the next administration, whoever comes in. That is likely going to be seen as a window for the Israelis to be able to operate with perhaps a bit more freedom than they have right now.
And Iran has announced that it will respond very harshly should Israel attack. Do you think that we're entering a sort of a new era where we're going to see tit-for-tat responses between Israel and Iran? Is that where we're headed, do you think?
I think there's a good likelihood of that. I think it really depends on what the targets are that Israel strikes. I have heard, for example, that the Israelis have been warned not to strike Tehran itself, the capital of the Islamic Republic. I think the chances of that are not likely, especially after that drone attack directed by Iranian officials working with Hezbollah to attack the home of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I think the Israelis are going to have very little choice but to take out targets that will be more meaningful and very likely then inside the capital, and then that may elicit a harsher response. Whether that leads to, just an escalation ladder, escalatory responses on both sides with fewer time in between, with less time in between each of these strikes. That's, I think, the worst case scenario from my perspective. But there are some interesting questions that I think need to be asked right now, which is, primarily, who does that benefit? If the Israelis are able to take out, for example, the air defenses of the Islamic Republic and then begin to escalate and take out nuclear sites and other sensitive military targets, does that benefit Israel in the long term? I think that is the big question that I ask myself right now as we head into this potentially dangerous moment of the war.
All right. Well, Jonathan Shanzer, thank you so much for your analysis today, and we'll, of course, continue following these developments. Thank you.
Thank you.
The IDF maneuver is continuing in Jabalia in northern Gaza, and a mass civilian exodus is underway. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has arrived in Israel, determined to guarantee the flow of humanitarian aid to Gazan civilians, promote the end of the war, and the return of the hostages. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz reports.
A mass exodus of Palestinian civilians is underway for a third straight day in Jabalia in northern Gaza. The IDF ordered the evacuations as it expands operations against Hamas operatives. IDF ground forces are escalating their operations, targeting Hamas infrastructure and tunnel shafts and attempting to separate the terrorists from the civilians. The army is also operating in Rafah in southern Gaza. IDF troops eliminated a number of Hamas terrorists and destroyed a weapons storage facility in the former Hamas stronghold. Amid heightened humanitarian concerns, Israel has reopened the Erez crossing to enable assistance to reach northern Gazan civilians. The army says that the civilian exodus is accelerating due to the breakdown of Hamas's control after the killing of its leader, Yahya Sinwar. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken is due to arrive in Israel for discussions that will include efforts to free the hostages, end the war, and guarantee the continuing flow of humanitarian aid to civilians in Gaza.
And do you want to transform your love for Israel into meaningful action? ILTV is proud to partner with Blessed by Israel, a company that brings you extraordinary products handcrafted by the brave pioneers of Judea and Samaria. Every purchase supports their mission and strengthens Israel's heartland. Let's take a closer look at Blessed by Israel and how you can make a difference today.
Support Israel with every purchase you make from Blessed by Israel. The goods they offer from families of the biblical heartland are more than just wonderful products. They're a statement of solidarity and an investment in Israel's future. When you shop at blessedbyisrael.com, you stand against boycotts and uplift the resilient pioneers rebuilding their homeland. Make your purchase count today. Visit blessedbyisrael.com. Shop now and become part of strengthening Israel's roots and securing a bright future.
And moving on, former U.S. President Donald Trump, in an interview with Saudi-owned Al Arabiya this week, slammed the Biden-Harris administration over their foreign policy with regards to Israel and the Middle East. The former president said he believes a lasting peace is possible for the region, but this will all depend on the outcome of the elections. More in the following report.
Former U.S. President and Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump has pledged to achieve lasting peace in the Middle East if he wins the presidential race. He made these comments this week in an interview with the Saudi Al Arabiya news channel.
I want to see the Middle East get back to peace, and real peace, but a peace that's going to be a lasting peace. And that's going to happen. I feel really, truly confident it's going to happen, and I believe it's going to happen soon. And we'll see what happens with the election. I think the election is going to make a big difference.
Trump also reiterated his claim that had he been president, October 7th would never have happened. With regards to the Islamic Republic of Iran, Trump said the regime should not be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon and reiterated his support for Israel to retaliate despite Biden's calls to temper a response.
I think he's going to do what he wants to do, and I think he has to do that. You know, Biden was giving him some very bad... Look, Biden has been historically horrible on foreign policy. Incompetent, I would say. What you do is anything he says, do the opposite, and you'll be brilliant if you do the opposite.
Trump also criticized the Biden-Harris administration for failing to expand the Abraham Accords these past 4 years.
We would have had 12 to 15 countries within a period of, literally within a period of a year, I think, at the most. They have none. They added none. And everybody respects it. You know, they respect it so much. But look, the framework is there. All they have to do is be inserted. And that'll happen very quickly. If I win, that will be an absolute priority. Just getting everybody in. It's peace in the Middle East. We need it. And it's very important, and it'll happen.
And today we have the privilege of hearing once again from Yael Eckstein, president of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. She shares with us a recap of some of the most important headlines from recent weeks. Let's take a look.
Shalom, my friends, from here in the Holy Land. I'm Yael Eckstein, and here are 3 things that you should know about Israel this week. Number 1, Israel continues to be bombarded by terror attacks and rocket attacks. Just last week in Hadera, there was a stabbing spree by a terrorist which killed 1 person, father of 7 children, and injured many more. Just earlier this week, there were over 60 Israeli soldiers injured as an explosive drone that shot out missiles was launched at Binyamina. We continue to pray for the full recovery of these soldiers. Number 2, in some positive updates, Doron, Raz, and Aviv. This is a mother and 2 daughters who were taken hostage by Hamas terrorists on October 7th and held in captivity for 49 days until they were freed in an exchange. Now, there was a very exciting announcement this week as Doron said that she is pregnant with her 3rd child. Within pain, we continue to hold on to life. And number 3, with some fellowship news. Again, there's some light in the darkness as Einat Nisim, a mother of 10 children, gave birth to her 11th child underground in Rambam Hospital under rocket attacks. Now, this is the underground protective unit of the hospital in Haifa that the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews helped to build, that even during times of war and missile attacks, they can continue saving lives. Well, there you have it, friends. There are 3 things that you now know about Israel. And I want to take this opportunity to wish you a happy Sukkot, a happy festival of booths. Here in Israel, it's an incredible time where people are outside in their booths worshiping God for the protection that He gives over us, even today, even during war. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Shalom.
And with tensions in the region on the rise, airlines continue to halt flights to and from Israel, raising obstacles for many Israelis hoping to travel during the holiday period. ILTV's Ariella Lechiani has more.
Yes, thank you, Lidar. So amid the ongoing escalation of tensions in the Middle East, many foreign airlines have announced they are extending their suspension period of flights to and from Israel. Wizz Air will not be resuming flights to or from Israel until January, whilst British Airways and Delta Airlines have announced they will not be resuming flights to or from Israel until March next year. Now, this comes following just yesterday the Israel Aviation Authority briefly halted and then resumed any takeoffs from Ben Gurion Airport due to an apparent escalation between Israel and Hezbollah. Now, this, of course, poses many complications, specifically during this time of year, the holiday period. It's a time when many Israelis wish to travel abroad and also when many Jews in the diaspora wish to come to Israel for the holiday of Sukkot. However, in spite of all of this, we have seen many Israelis traveling, and also we have seen thousands of Christians arrive in Israel to celebrate the Feast of the Tabernacles. So it's definitely a case of when there's a will, there's a way, and we are still seeing a good level of tourism for this time of year.
All right, thank you, Ariella. And now for some positive news. Nearly 600 Christian supporters of Israel from over 50 countries gathered at the Tower of David on Sunday evening for the annual Feast of Tabernacles roll call of the nations. In typical years, the feast attracts more than 6,000 people. However, due to limited flights and ongoing security concerns, this year attendance was lower. But despite this, the delegation was one of the largest to visit Israel since the October 7th massacre. The tour, which began on October 16th and runs until October 23rd, included visits to the Gaza border and the planting of hundreds of red and yellow tulip bulbs in memory of those fallen and abducted. These tulips will be planted at the new Nova Memorial site and will bloom this winter in the shape of a red heart and a yellow ribbon. And now, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country as temperatures reach lows around 13 degrees Celsius or 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, sunny skies and warm weather are expected as temperatures should climb to reach highs of 25 degrees Celsius or 78 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. And just a reminder, we'll not be broadcasting for the rest of the week due to the Jewish holiday. But for the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, ILTV.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Lidar Greve-Lazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.